How's it going, everyone? Welcome. Enrique Gonzalez here, exploring now what is the role of Node.js, this JavaScript runtimes that allows to build its servers, and by exploring a little bit is this huge Node overview in terms of the bigger picture, or this 5,000 view. I think it is the 5,000 feet view. I think it is 5,000 feet view, and this is something that I took from Kyle Simpson when he mentioned about this zoom out or the bigger picture, or this 5,000 foot view, as a way to understand now the role of Node.js. Briefly describe that, and well, finally get into what we really care in today's video, which is JavaScript, Node.js, and the computer. So, because the goal of this course, taught by Will Sentence, shout out to Will Sentence, right, is to see now how servers works, the nature of HTTP, how JavaScript works to control the computer internal features like file systems, network, encryptions, among others. Okay, and this will be the cross of what Node does. So explore a string, which is something that I am not quite familiar with. I have worked with that a little bit, so it is important to dive into that. So explore streams, asynchronicity, and I know very well this, and also the tool that we have now right now on JavaScript, the inner mechanism of JavaScript, which is the event loop, the callback queue, and the call stack, with the goal of knowing how to build effective servers. So why do you want to do this? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to provide your servers as a JavaScript developers, whether it's on the UI or on the server, and you want to now handle thousands of concurrent requests from the server, and then you want to now make it cost effective, that's one of the reasons why we need to understand this mechanism. This is pretty much if you have a motorcycle, when you want to know very well how to use that machine, therefore, so you can now consume the oil in the most effective way possible. So by knowing the clutch and knowing when to accelerate and for how long you accelerate, and to make the change to a different speed. So knowing all of this is something crucial to be cost effective. Another example is air condition, AC, or fridge, or let's say with your own budget, all right, with your money, the monetary, or perhaps this is a little bit wild, but it's also important to understand that the banking system, the monetary system, okay, as a way to be effective of or with your research when it comes to do that. Now, so because of that, let's go to now explore briefly is this Node overview as a way to ask a couple questions. Is that what is a web application? So in this particular case, let's assume that Michael, Rides, and Seth, right? They want to access is to a website called Twitter. Now, formerly known Twitter, but now is x.com. So Michael, Rich, and Seth wants to access to that, right? Wants to access to this document. So Michael, Rich, and Seth, for example, Michael is accessing on Windows, Chrome browsers, Rich from Linux Chrome browser, and Seth from the mobile Chrome mobile browser. Okay. However, the code that is needed for this page to load and provide interactivity is HTML that provides structure, CSS to prettify stuff, and JavaScript, which is a powerful small scripting language to provide now interactivity to the user. So for example, when you want to click on a button and that now do something. In our case is to send a message to another computer. So this another computer, aka a server, right, is going to handle and it's going to receive those incoming messages and inspect, or as the fancy name that they use that, okay, is this computer they're going to use now. This computer somewhere on the world connected to the internet is going to receive all of this message that are sent by Michael, Seth, or Rich, okay, and it's going to decide once it introspect the message, aka it analyze that, look into it, and decide what's coming back. This narrative, this way of describing this kind of stuff is something important, especially if you need to describe that not only for academic purpose, okay, but also for your clients. And you want to make them easy to digest this kind of highly technical content, especially as a senior developer or as a senior in any field. Your role is to make the complexity meaningful to others. And that is a sentence that I really love about that highly resonate with me, because those senior citizens in those different faculties or jobs and careers actually is because they understand that, and now they make all of those sentences very succinct, direct, and powerful based on his experience, and now it provide meaning to others. In our case, those who want to get into this. And this is now the role of whoever is getting to a particular career. In our case, the software engineering career. Now, because those messages, okay, are sending through the network. In other words, the physical car in the Michael, Seth, and in the Michael, Rich, and Seth devices now send a message over the internet so that another computer receive that, okay, and then introspect that or look into it and decide what's coming back. So the code that is where the application or the language that you can write this set of instructions in that machine, the server machine, is, well, PHP, Java. Not a big fan of Java, but it works, all right. But PHP, Java, Ruby, C++, and now JavaScript. But because JavaScript is this language that we can use to or that represent is this interactivity on the HTML and CSS elements. Typically, a server, what it does is to pick up files, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as well as assets, and then send over based on the request from Michael, Rich, or Seth, right? So because of this, and this is now internal feature of the computer, JavaScript doesn't have access to that. At the end of the day, this is just a scripting language. Unlike PHP, Java, C++, or Ruby, they are now language that can have access to the computer devices and features. So, because we don't have that, and we need to have the ability from JavaScript to access the network, to the file systems, to encrypt our data, okay, working with cryptography, to optimizing hashing password, okay, as well as the ability to work with the kernel input and output. So there is a language that allows to do that, and that is C or C++. So we need to write JavaScript to communicate with CSS that allows to manipulate those inner features in our computers. So these combinations of control, so you can think of this as a control panel where you are going to get exposed JavaScript labels, that each one of those JavaScript labels, so for example, as you can see here on the docs, okay, these JavaScript labels, certifications, what is it? Learn? No, but I want to get into the API. There you go. So this labels or identifier, JavaScript identifiers, so assertion testing, asynchronous context, async hooks, buffer, CSS add-on, child process, cluster, crypto, as we mentioned before, DNS, domain, file system, HTTP, HTTP2, and HTTPS, as well as the different way of organize JavaScript files, CommonJS, and now recently the ECMAScript, which is what it's doing by de facto. How you can access the net, the OS information, path, processes or process, permissions. Now this is something quite recently, SQLite, as a way to now store data in this file. So this is a database for files. String, which is something that I don't have too much experience on that, and I hopefully again I get that. Timers, TLS, URL, and talk now with the low-level APIs like V8, which is the JavaScript engine, and crypto. So all of these label identifiers allows to control is those computer features via C, C++ bindings. So this JavaScript, so JavaScript that controls Node.js, that controls now the computer features. So since JavaScript, as I mentioned before here, are labeled that are exposed from us, or exposed to us from the control panel in Node.js that is written in C and C++, we don't need to know about C or C++. We want to know is the mental model, is the inner mechanism. Okay, I want to call it here. I'm going to call it here the inner mechanism. Okay, I want to know is this the mental model, the inner mechanism around that, because that will develop is our mind. That will develop and that will open up our mind as a way to understand how these people thought about that and what are the patterns that we can use so we can understand that when it comes to know how JavaScript labels, takes commands through C++ and control our computer internal features. Let's get into this. All right, JavaScript node and the computer. So JavaScript, Node, and the computer. Let's get into this in the computer. All right. There you got it. Good. Come on, for you.
Sarah Rose's Mac opens, what's she opened? Twitter.com/node. By the way, people, I literally searched for a nice screenshot of tweets. So I thought it was something clean and nice like Node. And Twitter is a horrible place. The most upvoted tweet on there was, if you don't like Node, die. So I couldn't do a screenshot. And Twitter is /node. By the way, people, I literally searched for a nice screenshot of tweets. So I thought it was something clean and nice like Node. And Twitter is a horrible place. The most upvoted tweet on there was, if you don't like Node, die. So I couldn't do a screenshot, so we have to just imagine. That was the most upvoted tweet. 300 likes. If you don't like Node, you're going to die or something like that. What is this place? Anyway, all right, so Sarah Rose's Mac. Oh, Mac, okay. So
no, and it is like that because it's in the case of, I'm going to take notes out of this particular course from Will Sentence. So, yep. Sarah's.
By using different colors. Let's have. Node is green, isn't it, everybody? Let's do green. Okay. And then we'll use black for JavaScript, and we're going to use blue for our computer's internal. So, okay, Sarah Rose's Mac sends off an internet message. It lands at Twitter's computer. Yeah, Twitter's computer. There it is. Okay? It lands here. Up here, folk, is where we're going to write the JavaScript code that we're running.
And the features.
That inbound message definitely does not arrive in JavaScript. Remind me again, Zet, where it arrives?
To the network card.
Yeah.
To the network card.
Network card, effectively, right? So here is going to be our computer internals or internal features. And this, folk, this is where our inbound message arrives. It's got all the data we need to be able to send back to Sarah Rose the exact tweet she needs.
Okay. So here, so here we're going to see, yeah, so here we're going to see is, how now, exactly, what happened, see, what happened from the POV of JavaScript, Node, and the computer. What happened when a message, exactly, what happened when a message when a message arrived to the server from the POV of JavaScript, Node, and the computer. And I think that makes a lot of sense to actually describe that, right? Which is initially the Sarah's computer sent a request to the server and send a message. I prefer to use the word message right now. Send a message to the server, aka request. Request. So initially, the status computer send a message request to the server. To the server. Initially, the status computer sent a message request to the server, and it is received by the computer, and by the computer's network card. By the computer's network card. Okay, which is in this case exactly an image. Yep, computers.
But here's the problem. We want to write JavaScript code to access it, because we, unfortunately, didn't learn C++. No, not C++. Yeah, exactly. We didn't learn C++. So what are we going to do? Your name was, Charlie, how am I going to get access? Am I going to try and write JavaScript code directly, interact with these computer internal features? No, what am I going to do instead?
You can go through some C++ code.
That's spot on. I'm going to have Node, very light green, Node, C++ built features.
So to
there they are.
Access computer features,
the computer's internal,
we need to build an app or runtime. So we need to build code, or we need to write code
in JavaScript. They'll look like JavaScript functions.
Code in C.
The reality commands to Node C++ features. I will say this Node, some of this stuff is done in JavaScript as well, but the bulk, the interface with the computer's internals, are in C++.
Okay. But in this case, it's C++. So to access the computer features, we need to write code. We need to write C++ code. Okay. So we need to write C++ code for that, which is Node.js.
And from that, we will then affect and grab the message and pass it up. Now this may seem like, okay, why is that the JavaScript? Oh, people, the vast majority of the interesting stuff of Node's hard work So we better understand this intimately. But also, unfortunately, well, at least better understand how it's working. We don't understand the code, but know how it's working. We have to understand a bit about what's going on here. What is a socket, for example? But we also better understand how this language is working. All right, people. So, on that note, oh, here we go. Let's just reiterate this. C++, many features that let it directly interact with the operating system. That's what you call computer's internals. Directly. JavaScript doesn't. And by the way, just to be clear, C++ isn't going to go and sit on the network card itself. It's going to interact with abstract.
Exactly. So C++ is going to interact with. So C++ doesn't have access directly to. The C++ doesn't have access directly to the hardware. It's going to interact
action layers of the operating system as well. Things like epoll, KQ. We'll learn all about this sort of stuff a little bit later on, but hold that thought for now.
Exactly. So it doesn't have access directly to the hardware. It's going to the hardware. It's going to interact with OS layers features for that.
One is a combination known as Node.js. I don't know, it should be called Node.js/C++. For real, it should be acknowledging all the hard work here done by C++, not by JavaScript. JavaScript controls Node C++ feature, controls computer feature. Okay, got it? Good. Rewind. We better understand JavaScript's execution model if we're then going to understand Node. It's a language that does three things. There's a few other things, but three main.
So it's a language that do three main things. It does a lot of things, but it saves data and functionality. Use that data by running functionality code. Exactly how you can summarize is JavaScript. Is evaluating a statement. If you want to summarize JavaScript, is to save data and functionality. Use that data by running functionality, so execute that code, and then tons of labels. It has a ton of labels that trigger that. Exactly, it has a ton of labels, and in this case, the JavaScript has a ton of labels that we can have access to interact with our Node features or browser features. That those features are built in C++.
And one of them isn't even much in JavaScript. It's mostly using involves a lot of help from C++. One, it saves data, numbers, strings, arrays, objects, and functionality. That's code that's going to be run later on. Two, it uses that data by running functionality, saves code that's not being used yet, will be used later, on it. And then three, has a ton of built-in labels that are going to trigger Node features that are built in C++ to use our computers internals. But let's see these first two in action. The first two things that JavaScript does by itself, independent of Node, saving and using data. Let's see the two things that JavaScript does by itself without the help of Node background C++ features. So we're not doing that yet because we better understand this JavaScript language really intimately.
Yeah.
If we're going to know how it's going to interact with this feature down here, the Node C++ features. Here we go, people. JavaScript does two things. One, it saves stuff to a little data store within JavaScript. A little Sarah Rose's Mac by using with the computer's internals in C++. And from that, it's all happening down. Know how it's working. But we also better understand features that let it directly interact with the operating system. That's what you call the computer's internals. Directly. Network card itself. It's going to interact. C++ isn't going to go sit on the network card itself. It's going to interact with abstract, things like ePOL, KQ. We'll learn all about this sort of stuff with the JS. Work here, done by C++, not by JavaScript. JavaScript sit on the network card features that let it directly. All right, people. So, going on here. So we better understand this intimately and grab reality command up. We're going to access. Well, at least better understand how it's working. We don't understand the code, but know how it's working. Socket, for example. So, on that note, operating system, that's what you... And by the way, just to be clear, C++ isn't going to go and sit on the network card itself. It's going to learn all about this sort of JS/C++. So for real, it should be C++, not by JavaScript. Java, we have better... involves a lot and function. And then three, but let's... saving and using data. Let's see the two things. Now this may seem like, okay, great, why does that... JavaScript. We can use internals in C++. And from that, we will then affect and some of this stuff is done in JavaScript as well, but the bulk, the interface, we can use internals in C++. And from that, we will then affect and grab the message and pass it up. Now this may seem like, okay,
all right. So we better understand couple things. One, how the JavaScript works. Second, how the Node.js works. All right, in order to understand that, and also is the message sending and receiving mechanism, okay, aka the HTTP. So let's get into that. You know, yep, so we better be understand that pretty well. Okay, good. Now the question is that what is JavaScript? Okay, what is JavaScript? Or how can we summarize what JavaScript does? Okay, so what JavaScript does? Okay, so one, it allows to store data and functionality to be used later. And I think this is the core of this. It's like, hey, this allows us to now store data and it is functionality to be used later.
One, it saves data, numbers, strings, arrays, objects, and functionality. That's code that's going to be run later on.
Mm-hmm.
Two,
and functionality, right? So code that'll be used later on. Okay. Two, it allows to run those functionality. So or it allows to run the functionality with the data on it.
it uses that data by running functionality, saved code, that's what we
Mm-hmm. So it uses that data. Okay, so it uses that data by running functionality, functionality on it. Okay, or code on it. Okay, and the other is that access to features, platform specific.
yeah, we use later on it. And then 3 has a ton of built-in labels that are going to trigger Node features that are built in C++ to use our computer's internals.
Okay, and have a exactly has a ton of labels, and here the word label is important. Has a tons of labels to interact, or has a ton of labels to interact, or that trigger, yeah, has a ton of labels to trigger Node or browser, Node or browser, Node features reading in C++ that use of computer internal, or to use the computer's internals. right? So this might sound simple, for a lot of people, but it's important to describe that in order to have now a mindset, an approach of what are we doing with this language? What is the end goal of this language? So we can now provide more effective solutions when you need to, for example, is to build this server application. So be cost efficient and effective with that. And this is just only for servers applications, because then it comes the database management, okay? Which is, hey, how do you going to now modeling data in a way that is queryable and fast to retrieve, and then you can create index and all that sort of stuff, you know? It's like, but I think this is quite interesting to at least to understand that.
But let's see these first two in action. The first two things that JavaScript does by itself, independent of Node, saving and using data. Let's see the two things that JavaScript does by itself, without the help of Node back. By itself, built in C++ to use that user terms. But let's see these first two in action. The first two things that JavaScript does by itself
is to store data and its functionality, and then use that data uses that data by running functionality or code on it.
Independent of Node, saving and using data. Let's see the two things that JavaScript does by itself, without the help of Node background C++ features. So we're not doing that yet, because we better understand this JavaScript language really intimately if we're going to know how it's going to interact with this feature. Without the help of JavaScript does by itself, independent of Node.
Okay. So this is the two. Yep. So this is the two first things that JavaScript does. All right, and that is the finder. Oh, la maldita madre. Why you have this one, you know? And as you can see, is store the data and get its functionality to be later on, to be used later on, and then now run and then use that data to run, or use that data by running functionality on it, which is, for example, this. So we're using is the data num to run functionality that we stored previously on that data. So this is quite silly, but it's huge to open up on our understanding in terms of what is this. And that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.